everyone, and welcome back to my podcast, Long Distance Knits. I'm really excited to be podcasting again. I had planned to do this about a week ago, and life just kind of got really crazy. I'd been in St. Louis, and then I went home to my parents in Terre Haute, and then I went to a wedding in Indianapolis with one of my best friends, had a fantastic time, misplaced something very important to me, and spent kind of the next week agonizing and fretting over not having that. And now I have come back to St. Louis and am spending time at my boyfriend's. He is at work today, and I feel bad for him because it's about, I don't know, like 90 degrees, but with the heat index, it's a lot higher than that, and I just know he's miserable. So, I mean, it's miserable inside, which is why I kind of look like a bum. We're keeping the air conditioning at like 75, which I like. I like it warm. I'm dealing with it, but it does not make me want to like get up and get fancied up. And in fact, the only reason I have lipstick on is because I went to Target this morning and bought a new one and wanted to try it out. So it has been a while, but I want to keep this short and brief for two reasons. One, nobody has hours on end to sit and watch podcasts. I'm way behind on podcasts. In fact, I had to skip a couple of my favorite podcasts and just watch the current ones, which was kind of a bummer. And I realized I missed out on some really cool giveaways and awesome prizes. But that's what happens when you are busy. And even though summer definitely feels like the time that I have like all the time in the world because I don't have to go to work, I don't. I don't have all the time in the world. I've been running and doing fun stuff, and that means I'm not sitting at home watching podcasts knitting. So I have reached my destination on only one project, but I'm very happy to finish them. I actually finished them really quickly. These are my tattoo socks that I knit 2 at a time, starting with the toes on Magic Loop, and I'm really pleased with them. I did a vanilla sock, and I used the Toes by Terry pattern, which has this nice shaping, and they fit my toes really well, and they're pretty comfortable. I think I probably could have gone either reduced stitches or tried a different needle size. I think I used 1.5s on these. And the other pair of socks that I knit recently, I used size 1s or 2.25 millimeters. So I'm trying, you'll see soon, I'm trying another pair of socks that are a little bit different. But these were really quite fun to knit. I love the way that they turned up. I have a lot of this yarn left. This is the Claudia hand-painted yarns, and they come in 50-gram skeins, and I bought 2 of them so that I could work, one sock from each one. And combined, I have enough to probably knit an entire another pair of shorty socks. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, if I'm going to make another pair of socks or not. But yeah, in day 1, I had knit like this much, and over the next 2 days, I knit like the entire rest of my sock. I used the Fish Lips Kiss heel for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. I like the way that it looks. The colors turned out really nice with it, and it fits really well. And I don't have any like stubborn little holes, which is the biggest problem I gusset. Like, I think if you look here, there's maybe one little gap that I could have picked up a little tighter, done something a little differently. But I think I did a pretty good job for my first try. And if you follow me on Instagram, which is longdistancelife 2020, I think, I'll put it in my show notes. You probably saw when I posted about doing this heel, and I had been so intimidated by it. I don't know why. It really stressed me out, but it was, when I actually sat down to do it, it was really not that hard. And I really do like the way that it fits and the way that it looks, and I like the way that the socks lay, and I love not having gusset stitches and to pick up. So yeah, I was very pleased with these and really happy to have finished them. And kind of moving on to my next pair of socks. So these are the only destinations I've reached, my only finished objects, which is kind of a bummer since it has been like almost 3 weeks since I did my last podcast. But it just goes to show that I have not had a lot of knitting time until the last couple of days. So I have started a couple new projects, which I'll get to in a minute. But I want to go next to my mile markers, which are projects that I've previously started but have not completed. And this is my sock yarn blankie. And I added 3 new colors from the last time. All of this is Stroll Tonal. And these are really fun to knit. I actually knit, I started this one at a knitting night at a winery in Indy. Well, near Indy, not quite in Indy. And that was really fun. My best friend and I went. We had a great time. There were not very many people there. We sat with a couple of crocheters who jokingly told us that we couldn't sit with them because we crochet. We had a lovely time. One was working on this really cool like scrap yarn elephant stuffy that looked super fun. So I did that there, and I knit these other 2 in the car on my drive to and from the wedding with my friend Mark. So these are great because I feel like I get something done, like I can sit down, add a square on in a couple hours, and I feel like I'm getting something accomplished. Unlike the projects that I just started where I might knit on them for 2 hours and feel like I'm not going anywhere. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job keeping them all the same size and my tension. And, you know, I have said a couple times that picking up stitches is not the easiest thing for me. And so I think that this is really good practice. And I don't think I'm doing too badly with them. You know, they're pretty uniform. I'm slipping stitches so that they're a little bit easier to pick up, and just kind of playing it by ear. I need to get some more yarn probably to put on this. I like the idea that it's a scrap yarn blanket, but I don't have a lot of scrap yarn, and I don't want to use up, you know, even just a few grams of the sock yarns that I do have, because I have enough of all of those I could probably make another pair of socks. Like my Cloudy hand paints, or I have some Plymouth yarn, the Happy Feet yarn. I probably have enough to make another pair of socks out of. And so I'm torn between adding them to my scrap yarn blanket or trying to save them to knit another pair of socks. And also, Knit Picks just introduced a whole bunch of new Stroll colorways, and I just really love Stroll Tonal. I don't know, it's a good yarn. It is economical. You know, it's not the cheapest yarn I've ever bought. It's certainly not the most expensive yarn I've ever bought. I feel like it's a really good value. And they're having a 40% off sale, I think, like it's Knit Picks summer sale. So you can never go wrong stocking up on good yarn at a really good price. So I might have to buy some more of that and, you know, start by adding them to my sock yarn blanket and then figuring out what I'm gonna do with the rest of the yarn. But I have added 2 new projects. I am en route with 2 new things, and one of them has been an absolute delight, and one of them has been very infuriating. So I'm gonna start with the absolute delight, and that is the Bradway shawl by Shannon Cook. This came out over a year ago, I think. I found this on Ravelry and added it to my queue months ago, and have been thinking about knitting it, and for a while I just didn't really buy patterns. If there was a pattern that was like free for a limited time, I would snag those because I try to save as much money as I can while still knitting. But I've had a couple of things where I just can't pass them up, and this was one pattern that I had looked at, and I had a Google Doc of possible yarns that I could buy to make it with. And the local yarn store in Terre Haute, River Wools, was having a sale last month maybe, and I went in with my friend Kaylin, my knitting BFF, also my BFF who knits. She's not exclusively my best friend for knitting. We went in on like a Friday afternoon to check it out on her lunch break, and I saw this Cascade Cloud yarn, and it was in their sale. It was a good price, had these gorgeous colors, and it's so soft because it's a wool alpaca blend, and it's so squishy. And she had knit like a little shrug with it, like a tubular shrug, and really loved it. And so I decided I had to buy some. And then I decided that this would be perfect for the Bradway shawl. And I will try to insert a picture of it here, figure out how to do that. And so basically this is a triangular 3-color shawl that shifts through different stitches. So I bought the yarn, put it in a bag, brought it to St. Louis with me thinking I'm gonna cast this on eventually. And the other day I was looking at patterns, trying to figure out what I wanted to knit, kind of in like a knitting slump. Like I had cranked out a couple things really quickly, and then I just didn't want to knit anymore. All I wanted to do was play The Sims, which is quite enjoyable, but does not make me feel nearly as productive as an afternoon of knitting. So I was looking through my queue, and then I saw the Bradway shawl, and I thought, I need to knit this right now. So I fought PayPal, had to remember my password so that I could buy it. Had to like close out my Google because for some reason it just would not load. Like I tried 6 times and it wouldn't let me pay for it. But I finally got through, and now I have the start of a very beautiful shawl that I'm really super excited about. This yarn is a delight to work with. And then the first day I sat down and did like all of this first triangle through the white. I just could not stop knitting. And I knit so much that I had like a little callus on my pinky where the yarn like runs across it when I hold it. But I'm just loving it. So we've got some garter stitch, there's some, I don't know what she calls it, like a tile stitch, there's a twisted rib, and I have not done something quite like this before. I have knit triangular shawls, I have knit things where you change colors, I have never done the two together. And I do find it a little challenging to keep the yarn kind of tight when you knit the first one and then you immediately have a yarn over on the color change. But I'm really, really enjoying knitting this. The problem is, because of the yarn I'm using, it's a little heavy to knit during the summer. And so I get very warm knitting it and can only knit like a row or two at a time. And I'm back to kind of the cushy garter part that I don't have to pay a lot of attention to. I find myself on the other 2 stitch patterns constantly checking the pattern just to make sure that I'm doing it right. And that's more of just a security thing, because of spending this much time working on it, I don't want to realize that I've screwed up and have to rip back. And I don't have really any scrap yarn that I could use for a lifeline. And I don't know where I would put it, like maybe at the end of a section. But this is really fun, and I really love this. I love this yarn. I like the pattern a lot. It's very easy to follow. It's really nicely written. And I just think this is gonna make a wonderful little shawl. Well, a big shawl. And it's so stretchy. My only concern was that this blue color was going to run, and I looked at the reviews and comments on Ravelry for this yarn, and no one had really commented on that, but I did test my gauge swatch and no color came out. You know, it didn't get wet, it didn't run on the towel. But I'm still like moderately nervous that I'm going to try to block this and end up with like light blue instead of white. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm gonna love it anyway. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm even halfway done. I'm about to switch back to the main gold color, but it's really gorgeous, really lovely to knit, and I really like it. It's so soft, and I can't wait to get it finished. Even though I have no reason to wear it when it's 90 degrees, I do not need a merino alpaca shawl to go out and about, but I want it. I want to be able to wear it, even though it is way too hot for that. On the other hand, we have these socks that I decided to start recently because I realized I have a little bit more time in the Die Another Day Selfish Summer Sock Cow that I can probably knit up another pair of socks. And I was just staring at this rusted nail colorway, really wanting to knit with it. And I decided like, oh, I'll just knit another pair of socks 2 at a time. It'll be great. So I wound up my yarn And I used I have like an electric ball winder. I don't love it, but it works. Actually, lately I've been like hand winding things because I find that really soothing. So I will just stand at the dinner table and hand wind a ball from my Swift while watching television. But I wanted to save time, so I wound this on the yarn winder, and it works pretty well because I'm knitting from the inside and the outside at once. So that's kind of nice, but I love this yarn. It's got so many pretty colors. And in fact, I kind of want to buy more of this because I think this would make like an amazing 3-color cashmere shawl, or like the Party on My Needles pattern. It's gushy, I don't know. I like this yarn a lot, so I really wanted to knit with it. It spoke to me. And when I was in 4th grade, I stepped on a nail. And so there's part of me that's like, it's only fitting that I would make a pair of socks out of my rusty nail yarn. And so I'm calling these my trusty rusty socks, which is maybe a little silly, but it rhymes and I like it. And they're not being very trusty right now. I had to start these over like 10 times. First, I just, for some reason, could not do Judy's Magic Cast On to save my life, which is amazing because in my last episode, I talked about how easy it was and how much I loved it. It's really easy when you do it the right way. It is not so easy when you like wrap your needle wrong. And so I was like doing it by putting the bottom yarn through the bottom needle around the bottom yarn, the top needle around the top yarn, and that is backwards. And actually this one toe, I just had to rip out and redo because I started one sock pattern, did not like the way it was looking, insisted that the pattern was wrong, and did not look like the picture, and then realized that I had just been reading the pattern wrong. And I don't know, it was like a minor thing that I had done. I had like purled rather than knitting, and so the basics of the pattern were all the same. Like the way the design was gonna look was pretty much the same. And I just don't know if that was the pattern that I wanted for these. I don't know. It seemed, maybe it's like too dainty or too delicate. And so since I had been working on my right one, I had to rip the whole thing out. I tried to go back just to the end of the sock, or of the toe. Basically the toe pattern really ends here, and then I just added some stockinette so that the pattern doesn't start like here on my foot, because this is a very small toe, like it barely covers your toes. So I wanted to add a little bit more to it. And I tried to like unknit it back. And I was nervous because the pattern I had been using had yarn overs in it and knit twos together, and I don't usually unknit those. And I don't know, I dropped a stitch somehow and really messed it up. And finally, after unknitting like 2.5 rows in, I don't know, 20 minutes, took way longer than I feel like it should have, I ended up just ripping the whole toe out and being like, it'll be faster to do it over. So I only have 2 toes, a right and a left, and I had intended to knit these 2 at a time on one set of needles, and I was having trouble with the cast on and getting really frustrated, and I just decided, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm going to knit them tandem. I only have one cake of yarn. It's going to get all twisted around each other. I'm just doing each of them on their own needles. So yeah, I have a right and a left, which I think are actually backwards. I don't have them the right way probably, but I like the way the yarn is working up. It's really pretty. It's like a gorgeous deep color. One thing that's weird, I don't know if you can see it, I always get these little bumps on the end of my Judy's Magic Cast On, and this is definitely where my slip knot is. And I don't know if maybe I'm making a slip knot wrong. Can you do that? I mean, Kaylin has always made fun of me for not being very good at making them. I cannot make knots to save my life. I don't know. I make them in like the silliest way, and she always laughs at me. So maybe I'm doing something wrong there. I'm not 100% sure. But I gotta figure that out. So I finally have the toes done after working on it for 2 days and like just crying about it. Like I sat down and looked at my boyfriend and cried because I could not knit the toe of my sock. And fortunately, he is very supportive and had recently been struggling through the end of a video game that had really frustrated him, and laughed and told me that the toes of my sock were my dark souls of knitting. And I don't know, it made me feel a lot better, and so I put them aside until the next day and started over. And now I have toes, and I just need to figure out what sock body I want to use, because I don't want to just do vanilla knit. And I'm thinking about doing the Simple Skip Socks by Adrienne Q. I don't know how you say her last name. Apologize for mispronouncing it. They were talking about it on the Grocery Girls podcast recently, and I think it's pretty. It's only a 2-row repeat, and I'm definitely looking for something that I can kind of internalize and then not have to constantly be looking back at the pattern. And so that seems like a good one for me. And I think it'll look nice on short socks, because as I've established last time, I don't really make long full-length socks. I have one pair of those, and I think what I want to do is get a lot of sport weight yarn and make some really like knee-length socks, really tall ones that I can wear with my winter boots, because I have two purposes for socks: when I'm wearing tennis shoes and when I'm wearing boots. And when I'm wearing tennis shoes, I tend to like shorter ones, and when I'm wearing my boots, I want really tall ones, because I like to tuck my jeans into my socks to hold them in place, so that I can zip my boot up. And so I think that I'm going to buy some sport weight yarn to make socks out of, so I think that will be good. Plus, my actual winter boots only came in whole sizes, and I'm definitely a half size person. So I have a lot of wiggle room in my winter boots that I usually wear 2 pairs of socks with them anyway. So having one that is a little bit thicker will probably be really nice. And so, yeah, I have a pair of socks en route that I'm working on, and my Bradway shawl that I'm really excited about. And really, I mean, I have done a lot of knitting in the last week, mostly on that Bradway shawl, and then mostly knitting and ripping out and re-knitting socks. But I feel like I don't have a lot to show for it. And part of that is because I am just lusting after a sweater pattern. And I am trying and can't for the life of me figure out what yarn I want to use for it. And so one of the things that's on my radar this week is the Season's Promise sweater by Melissa Shashwari, maybe, Dandelion Girl Designs. It is gorgeous. I saw somewhere, found their Ravelry group. She and another designer have a shared Ravelry group, and they are doing like a summer 50% off sale. And so I was looking through her patterns, because I want to knit myself a sweater, but I want to knit myself a sweater that I will actually wear. And I want something that's going to be simple and easy to knit with a lot of stockinette, but not so boring that it's just all like round and round stockinette. And this is like a really pretty sweater with some mesh paneling across it and down the side. And I don't know, I just saw it, fell in love, had to have it. Bought the pattern while I had a 50% off code. And now I need yarn, and it requires DK weight yarn, which I don't use very often. Pretty much I use worsted weight and fingering weight. I don't knit a lot with bulky yarn. I've knit a couple bulky things, and I like that it knits up really quickly, but sometimes I get tired of holding really big needles. And I hate that you just get so little yardage of it. So you always have to buy a lot of yarn. And it always seems like it's way more expensive. I don't know. I made myself a cowl out of bulky yarn, and I do love it. I wear it, it's so comfortable, it's gorgeous. But it was definitely one of those projects where, am I done with it yet? Am I done with it yet? Am I done with it yet? So I'm totally stocking this Season's Promise sweater, and it's gorgeous. And all of the sample knits are in like these really pretty fall tonal colors. And I am just realizing that this is going to be like, I don't know, $100, $150 worth of yarn. Which, on the one hand, It's my hobby. I've definitely purchased that much yarn. Like, I've probably spent over $100 on yarn in the last month. On the other hand, it just seems like such a big undertaking. And I want to make sure that I buy the right yarn because I don't want to decide that I don't like the yarn later. So I was really excited about Knit Pick sale because hoping I would be able to find something there. And I just did not, I don't know. I really like their city tweed yarn, but I don't know that this sweater would look very good in a tweed. Kaylin reassures me that it will look good in anything, but I'm just torn. I like tweed, but I don't think I've ever worked with a tweed yarn before. So I'm definitely stocking that. It is on my radar to be knitted soon. Maybe I will go to Notorious here in St. Louis and check out some of their yarns because I feel like if I'm going to drop, you know, over $100 on yarn, I should at least support a local business rather than buying it through the internet. And then one of the things is I feel like a lot of these tonal colorways are by brands that don't do dye lots, like Malabrigo or Madeline Tosh. Like, they don't really have a dye lot, so you've got to kind of match them. And so I think it would be better to look at them myself and decide if they are a good enough match in person rather than just trust somebody at the distant internet store warehouse. Not that I think they would do a poor job of it, just, I don't know, it's like taking a chance. And I hear a lot of other knitters talk about how differently those yarns look in person versus on the internet. And just kind of, I want to make sure that if I'm going to spend that much money, I'm getting the colorway yarn that I love. So yes, if you have any suggestions for your favorite DK weight yarn, please feel free to share them with me because I don't use it very often. And yeah, some advice would be great. I have also been eyeing Lolo Did It, which I started following on Etsy and Instagram several months ago. And her yarn's really pretty. She has lots of like tonal speckly yarns. She has, you know, tonal solid yarns that if you wanted to do like heel toe cuff in one color and then like a speckly foot color, you could do that. And she has many gorgeous ones. The grocery girls have been knitting with her yarn lately, so I keep getting like seeing it in my face. And she keeps sharing yarn ideas for Joji Locatelli's new Party on My Needles pattern, and they're just so pretty. She has just some of the coolest yarn. And one of the things that I greatly regret is not getting some of her Dowager Countess yarn. I don't know if she just hasn't dyed it recently. I don't know if she doesn't plan to dye any more of it. But it was a really pretty like purple green gray color that I liked a lot. And I feel like I keep looking at her yarn and being like, oh, I like this one. Oh, but it's not the Dowager Countess yarn. Oh, I like this one, but it's not the Dowager Countess yarn. So I'm sad that I didn't grab that when it was in. But I do kind of keep just staring at her Etsy store, waiting for her to update, hoping that it'll be back in stock. It is not that I don't like her other yarns. I just, for some reason, I am like holding that as the standard. Like, that's the yarn I want from her. But I don't know. Maybe I will end up buying some of the other ones. I do love, like I said, on her Instagram, she shares yarn ideas. So you can see what of her speckles are going to look really good or cool with her tonal colorways. And so I think that that's really handy and helpful. And yeah, follow her on Instagram because you at least get some really cool suggestions for things you compare together that I would not have thought of. Yeah, Lolo Did It. Check her out. You've probably already heard of her. So I think that that's about where I am with knitting right now. Just one lonely little finished object and a few things in my works in progress that I'm enjoying knitting. Some of it I need more yarn for. Some of it that, you know, just gonna take me a while to get through. But it has definitely been a productive week this week in terms of knitting, especially after not knitting for a while and kind of running and doing a ton of life things, and I feel like kind of life is settling down a little bit, and I have a lot of time to knit, even though I do get a little bit stir crazy. So hopefully I will not go 3 weeks between now and my next podcast, and I'm going to try to keep them on the shorter side for the sake of time and for the sake of editing and uploading, because I am an impatient person, and I don't like when YouTube is like, it's going to take you 9 million hours to upload your video. It's definitely an exaggeration. So I'm going to try to keep them on the shorter side, and hopefully in an upcoming episode, I will be able to sit and talk with someone. That is ultimately what I would like to do, find someone who will video chat with me while we knit, talk about knitting, talk about what's going on in your lives, and then I can share that, because I think that would be really fun. So if you are interested in knitting with me, hit me up, get a hold of me, and we will find a way that we can meet up virtually, do some knitting together, and then share that knitting with other people. So thank you for joining me. Check me out on Ravelry, where I'm just Long Distance Life, and on Instagram, where I'm Long Distance Life 2020. Thanks so much for watching, and hope you all have a great day.